One lie. That's all it took to unravel the careful facade of her marriage. When Nina told Caleb she'd been fired instead of promoted, she never expected his mask to slip so completely. The cruel words she overheard that morning, "She's not built for success," never was, weren't just a betrayal, they were an awakening. As she watched her husband's true nature reveal itself day by day, Nina felt something within her transforming. The woman who had once sought his approval was vanishing, replaced by someone calculating, patient, and dangerously observant. While Caleb thought he was dismantling her life, he never noticed she was meticulously documenting his. He believed she was broken, but Nina was simply gathering evidence, waiting for the perfect moment to show him exactly who she had become. Unstoppable. Nina Halden stared at the email on her screen, reading it for the 5th time. The words, Executive Strategy Director, glowed back at her, the culmination of 3 years of late nights, flawless presentations, and sacrificed weekends. Her fingers trembled slightly as she scrolled through the details: salary increase, expanded team, direct report to the CEO. This wasn't just a promotion, it was validation. Her office phone rang, breaking her trance. "You're staring at it again, aren't you?" Vanessa's voice came through, warm with amusement. Nina laughed. "How did you know?" "Because I know you, and I know what this means to you." Vanessa paused. "Have you told Caleb yet?" "Not yet. I'm seeing him tonight. Bet your husband will freak," Vanessa said with a chuckle. "In a good way, I mean. This is huge, Nina." Nina's smile faltered slightly. "Yeah." After hanging up, Nina leaned back in her chair, thoughts drifting to Caleb. Their marriage had been different lately. Small comments about her work hours. Subtle digs about her ambition. Nothing she could pinpoint exactly, but enough to create a knot of unease in her stomach. An idea formed, not fully rational but compelling. What if, instead of telling Caleb about her promotion, she told him she'd been fired? Just to see his reaction. To test if he'd support her when she was down, not up. It was impulsive. Perhaps unfair. But something inside her needed to know. That evening, Nina arrived home to find Caleb already there, loosening his tie in the living room. Their modern townhouse, her down payment, his decorating choices, felt oddly hollow tonight. "You're home early," he remarked, not looking up from his phone. Nina set down her bag, heart racing. "I need to talk to you about something." He glanced up, blue eyes narrowing slightly. "What's wrong?" She took a deep breath. "I lost my job today." The lie felt strange on her tongue, but she watched carefully as Caleb's expression shifted. First surprise, then, was that a flash of satisfaction? His posture stiffened. "What did you do?" he asked flatly. No comfort. "No, I'm sorry. Or are you okay?" Nina's stomach dropped. "What do you mean? What did I do?" Caleb sighed, setting his phone down. "You must have done something. They don't just fire people for no reason, especially not at your level." Nina faltered, unprepared for this response. "It was a restructuring." Caleb snorted. "Restructuring is code for underperformance, Nina." His voice hardened. "Figures. You always mess up when things matter." The words hit her like a physical blow. Always mess up? When had she ever failed at work? "I thought you'd be more supportive," she said quietly. "Supportive of what? You losing your job? Sorry if I'm not celebrating." He walked to the kitchen, opening the refrigerator with unnecessary force. "We're going to have to cut back now. No more of those weekend trips you like. I can't do everything myself." Nina followed him, disbelief mounting. This was the man who had once called her his brilliant star. The man who'd proposed saying he'd never met anyone so capable. Now he was acting like her imaginary failure was inevitable. "It's just a job, Caleb. I'll find another one. Will you?" He began aggressively chopping vegetables for dinner. "The market's tight. And you've been pretty comfortable there. Who knows if you've kept your edge?" Throughout dinner, Caleb made snide remarks about their finances, about her wasted potential, about how they'd need to readjust expectations. Nina ate in stunned silence, her mind racing. Was this how he truly saw her? As someone perpetually on the verge of failure? That night, after Caleb had fallen asleep, Nina slipped out of bed and retrieved her journal from its hiding place behind her winter sweaters. By the dim light of her phone, she wrote, "Red flags I can no longer ignore. No emotional support when I needed it. Immediate blame, no questions. Assumption of my failure. Financial threats disguised as reality checks." She paused, pen hovering over the page. Was she overreacting? Maybe he'd just had a bad day. Maybe the stress of believing she'd lost her job had triggered something. Maybe tomorrow he'd apologize. Nina closed the journal, replaced it, and crawled back into bed, watching Caleb's sleeping form. The doubt had taken root, but she needed more to be sure. The next morning, Nina woke early, the first gray light of dawn filtering through their blinds. She had planned to get up, make coffee, and head to work as usual, maintaining her ruse by saying she needed to clean out her desk. But as she reached the hallway, she heard Caleb's voice from the kitchen. Low, secretive. She froze, listening. "I know, Mom. I told you she'd mess it up." A pause. "Yeah, exactly what I predicted. She's not built for success. Never was." Nina's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. The cold, dismissive tone. The casual certainty. This wasn't a momentary lapse. This was how he truly felt. Her heart sank like a stone in deep water.
Nina called in sick that day.
She couldn't face pretending everything was normal at work while her personal life was crumbling beneath her feet. Instead, she sat in her car 3 blocks from home, calling Vanessa. He said what? Vanessa's voice crackled through the speaker. "Nina, that's awful." "I know." Nina stared blankly at the dashboard. "I don't even know who he is anymore." "You need to come clean about the promotion," Vanessa urged. "This charade isn't healthy."
No.
Nina's response was immediate. "Not yet. I need to understand what's happening first." "What's happening is your husband is showing his true colors," Vanessa said bluntly.
Maybe. But there's more to this.
"I can feel it." The next week became an exercise in quiet observation. Nina maintained her fictional unemployment, telling Caleb she was networking and applying for jobs. In reality, she was going to work every day, excelling in her new role, and watching her husband transform into someone she barely recognized. Caleb began coming home later, claiming client meetings and team dinners. His casual cruelty became more pronounced. "Now you finally have time to clean for once," he remarked one evening, gesturing at dishes in the sink. "Silver lining, right?" Nina swallowed her retort, nodding instead. "Right." She noticed him whispering on the phone late at night, conversations that ended abruptly when she approached. One evening, after he'd gone to bed, Nina placed a small audio recorder she'd purchased underneath the kitchen counter, where Caleb always took his private calls. The next day, she retrieved it while he was in the shower and listened through earbuds. "She's completely lost, Mom." Caleb's voice came through clearly, "just wandering around the house like a ghost. I told you she wouldn't handle failure well." His mother's voice was fainter, but still audible. "How long will this go on? You said you had a plan."
Ida.
"If she doesn't bounce back, I'll get access to the house. We discussed this." Nina's blood ran cold. The house? Her house? The one she'd put the entire down payment on from her savings before they were married? That afternoon, while Caleb was at work, Nina logged into their joint bank accounts. Nothing seemed immediately amiss until she reviewed the transaction history for the past 6 months. Small withdrawals, never more than a few $100s at a time, transferred to an account labeled only as CH Secondary. A separate account she knew nothing about. Her phone buzzed with a text from Joel, her boss. "HR needs your signature on the promotion paperwork. When can you come in?" "Stall them," she typed back. "I need more time." Nina sat at their dining table, mind racing. What was Caleb planning? Why the secret account? And what did he mean about access to the house? That evening, as she hung up Caleb's coat after he'd tossed it on the couch, something fell from the pocket. A receipt. Nina picked it up, examining it carefully. It was from Harlow's, an upscale jewelry boutique downtown. The item description was vague, gold pendant, but the size and style were listed. Not her size. Not her style. Nina carefully replaced the receipt and hung the coat, heart pounding. Later, alone in their bathroom, she began a notes file on her phone, password protected. Evidence. 1 phone call to mother, discussing access to house. 2. Secret bank account. Regular transfers. 3. Jewelry receipt, not for me. 4. Late nights increasing, unverified whereabouts. She stared at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. How had she missed this? How long had Caleb been planning? Whatever this was. Nina's phone buzzed again. A text from Vanessa. Drinks tomorrow? You need to talk to someone who isn't a lying jerk. For the first time that day, Nina smiled. The next morning, Nina waited until Caleb left for work, then drove directly to Harlow's boutique. The shop was just opening, its polished display cases gleaming under soft lighting. Nina clutched the receipt in her hand. Good morning. The clerk greeted her, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes. Can I help you find something? Nina placed the receipt on the counter. My husband purchased this last week. I was wondering if you remembered him. The clerk studied the receipt, then brightened. Oh yes, the gold pendant with the emerald inlay. Lovely piece. Was he alone? Nina asked, keeping her voice casual. The clerk hesitated. He was with a woman, actually. I assumed it was you. What did she look like? Younger.
Blonde.
They seemed very comfortable together. Nina nodded, thanking her, and left the store feeling numb. Outside, she called Vanessa. I need a favor, she said without preamble. Can you follow Caleb tonight? There was a pause.
Wow.
We've reached the stalking phase. That's completely justified at this point. Text me his office address. That evening, Nina told Caleb she had a networking dinner. Instead, she sat in her car 2 blocks from their house, waiting for updates from Vanessa. At 7:43 p.m., her phone buzzed. He's leaving the office. Following. At 8:12 p.m., parking at Vino Verde, that wine bar on 6th. At 8:27 p.m., he's with a woman.
Blonde.
Younger. They're sitting very close. At 8:53 p.m., taking pictures now. Her name is Gina based on what I'm overhearing. She works with him. At 9:40 p.m., they're leaving, hand-holding in the parking lot.
I'm sorry, Nina.
Nina drove home slowly, arriving just before Caleb. She pretended to be reading in bed when he came in, smelling of wine, and wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. How was your networking thing? He asked, loosening his tie.
Promising, Nina Lit.
How was your late meeting? Boring, he replied without hesitation. Budget reviews. You know how it is. Nina nodded, her face neutral, while her mind screamed. She'd expected to feel rage, but instead felt a cold, clear certainty. This wasn't just about her career or his insecurity. This was calculated. The next morning, Caleb brought up their finances over breakfast. I've been thinking, he said, sipping his coffee. We should probably sell your car. We don't need 2 vehicles with you at home. My car is paid off, Nina pointed out. It doesn't cost us much to keep it. It's about making ends meet, Nina. We're down to 1 income now. Sacrifices have to be made. She watched him carefully. Are things that tight? They will be, he said with an edge of impatience. Better to be proactive. After he left, Nina positioned her recorder again, this time in the living room where Caleb often paced during his evening calls. When she retrieved it the next day, she found exactly what she feared. The prenup is the issue, Caleb was saying to his mother. She never signed one. Then, what's your plan? Mara's voice came through. If she can't keep her job, she loses her leverage. She'll settle for anything just to maintain some stability. Nina's hands shook as she stopped the recording. She'd never considered a prenup. They'd married young, neither with significant assets. But now, with her career soaring and his seemingly stagnant, the equation had changed. She called Vanessa. I need a lawyer, she said without greeting. A good one. Already on it, Vanessa replied. My cousin's husband is the best divorce attorney in the city. He can see you tomorrow. Tell him I'll be there. Next, Nina called Joel. I'm officially accepting the promotion, she said firmly. But I need you to keep it confidential for now. Just between us and HR. Is everything okay? Joel asked, concern evident in his voice. Not yet, Nina answered truthfully. But it will be. That evening, Caleb broached another financial topic. I think we should liquidate some of the savings, he said casually over dinner. Just temporarily, to cover bills until you find something. Nina looked up, feigning innocence. Which account? The joint one. We have what, about 30,000 in there? Something like that, she agreed, knowing the exact figure was closer to 45,000, mostly from her bonuses. If you think it's necessary. I do, he said, looking relieved at her compliance. I'll take care of it tomorrow. Nina nodded, then watched from the hallway that night as Caleb made another transfer on his laptop. This time for $5,000 to an account labeled G. Ellis. Gina Ellis. She finally had a full name. The law office of Baldwin and Associates occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown building. William Baldwin himself, Vanessa's connection, was a stern-faced man with piercing eyes that missed nothing. Based on what you've told me, he said after Nina had explained everything, we're dealing with financial infidelity at minimum and potentially fraud if he's been planning this systematically. What do I do first? Nina asked. Protect your assets, Baldwin replied immediately. Separate whatever you legally can. Change passwords. Lock your credit. Document everything. Nina spent the next 3 days implementing a financial fortress around her individual holdings. She moved her personal savings to a new bank entirely. She froze credit applications in both their names. She documented every suspicious transaction from the joint accounts with meticulous detail, all while pretending to be the dejected, unemployed wife at home. Have you had any leads? Caleb asked one evening, his tone suggesting he hoped the answer was no. A few informational interviews, Nina lied. Nothing solid yet. She'd been rehearsing a confrontation in her mind, playing out scenarios, but her lawyer had advised patience. Build your case first, Baldwin had said. Evidence is everything. Nina created her first trap the following Tuesday. She printed a fake bank statement showing a severance payment of $50,000 deposited into her personal account, an account Caleb didn't know existed. She left it partially visible in her desk drawer, which she knew he searched when she wasn't home. The change in his behavior was immediate and sickening. Hey, he said that evening, sliding his arms around her waist as she washed dishes. You seem stressed. Let me finish these for you. Nina tensed at his touch but forced a smile. Thanks. Over the next few days, Caleb became increasingly attentive, bringing home flowers, suggesting they order from her favorite restaurant, asking about her job search with newfound interest. You know, he said one night as they sat on the couch, his arm draped possessively around her shoulders, I think we can work through anything. Together. Nina studied his face, handsome features she once found so honest, now revealing calculation behind every smile. That means a lot, she replied softly. I've been worried about us. No need, he assured her, squeezing her shoulder. We're solid. The final trap needed to involve Mara, Caleb's mother. Nina had always sensed disapproval from the woman, but now understood it ran deeper than she'd imagined. I was thinking, Nina said casually over breakfast, maybe we should have your mom over for dinner this weekend? I could use some family support right now. Caleb looked surprised but pleased. That's a great idea. She's been asking about you. Nina spent the next 3 days planning the dinner meticulously. She positioned hidden recording devices in both the dining room and kitchen. She prepared Mara's favorite meal, roast beef with all the trimmings. And she rehearsed her performance. Mara arrived Saturday evening in a cloud of expensive perfume, offering Nina a stiff hug. Darling, you look tired, she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. It's been a challenging time, Nina replied with practiced vulnerability. Throughout dinner, Nina played the role of the defeated career woman expertly. She mentioned financial worries. She expressed insecurity about her professional future. And then, as dessert was served, she dropped her bombshell. "I've been thinking," she said hesitantly, "maybe I should sign the house over to Caleb. Since I'm unemployed, it might be better for tax purposes." The gleam in both their eyes was unmistakable. "That's very practical of you," Mara said, patting Nina's hand condescendingly. "Sometimes we have to recognize our limitations." "Mom's right," Caleb added quickly. "It's just paperwork, really. Makes things cleaner." Nina excused herself to the kitchen to fetch coffee, leaving the recorder running. When she returned minutes later, she caught the tail end of their exchange. "Told you she'd come around," Caleb was saying in a low voice. "Just make sure it's legally binding," Mara whispered back. "Get it done before she changes her mind." Nina served coffee with a serene smile, her suspicions fully confirmed. The next morning, she sent the entire recording to Baldwin with a brief message. Proof of conspiracy. Moving to Phase 2. She visited the boutique again, this time speaking to a different clerk who was even more forthcoming. "Oh yes, Mr. Halden. He bought a lovely lingerie set last week. Black lace, very elegant." Nina's size was medium. The receipt showed small. With Vanessa's help, Nina traced Gina Ellis to a new address, a luxury apartment complex downtown that would have been far beyond the woman's salary alone. The leasing office confirmed what Nina already suspected. The apartment was co-signed by Caleb Halden. "For his sister," the manager explained, clearly repeating what she'd been told. Nina's final trap was perhaps the most revealing. She created a fake interview notification and left it prominently displayed on their shared digital calendar. Final interview. Portland executive position. 2-day trip. The evening before her supposed departure, Nina packed a suitcase and told Caleb she'd be gone for 2 nights. "This could be it," she said, feigning excitement. "The job would mean relocating, but the salary is amazing." "Relocating," Caleb repeated, something calculating passing behind his eyes. "Well, we'd have to discuss that. But good luck." Nina thanked him, kissed his cheek, and left, driving only as far as a hotel 10 minutes away. From there, she accessed the home security system she'd upgraded the previous week, now with cameras positioned throughout the house. She watched as Caleb immediately began rummaging through her desk, photographing documents with his phone. He accessed their joint accounts online, checking balances. He made 3 separate phone calls, though the audio wasn't clear enough to catch everything. But Nina didn't need to hear the words. The actions spoke volumes. Later that night, a text notification lit up her phone. Caleb's message to Gina accidentally synced to their shared iPad that Nina had brought with her. "We're almost there. She's buying it. Soon we'll have the house." Nina forwarded the screenshot to Baldwin, who responded immediately, filing the cease and desist order tomorrow. All marital financial transfers will be frozen. The next morning, Joel called with news that lifted her spirits slightly. "The Leadership Summit next month. We want you to be one of the keynote speakers. Navigating change in corporate structures. Your promotion has already created quite a buzz." Nina agreed, a plan forming in her mind. That would be the perfect moment to go public with her success and Caleb's betrayal. That afternoon, she met with a notary and signed the paperwork Baldwin had prepared, transferring her personal savings into a protected trust that Caleb couldn't touch, even as her spouse. Back at the hotel, Nina called Vanessa. "It's time," she said simply. "He's going to get exactly what he deserves." "Are you sure you're ready?" Vanessa asked. Nina looked at the evidence she'd gathered over the past weeks: recordings, photographs, financial records, witness statements. The story they told was clear and damning. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." Nina sat cross-legged on the hotel bed, reviewing the recording from the dinner with Mara. The audio quality was perfect, every condescending word, every calculated pause captured with crystal clarity. She had placed 3 separate recording devices around the dining room, ensuring nothing would be missed. As she listened again to Mara's dismissive tone when discussing Nina's career prospects, her blood simmered with quiet rage. "Your evidence is compelling," Baldwin said over the phone, his voice carrying the confident assurance she had come to rely on these past weeks. The conspiracy is clear. They're explicitly planning to manipulate you out of your assets. The recording where they discuss securing the house is particularly damning. Forward everything to your secure server, Nina instructed, rubbing her temples. I want backups of all backups. If anything happens to my devices, I need to know this evidence is safe. After ending the call, Nina stared at the wall, allowing herself a moment to feel the hurt beneath her determination. The betrayal cut deeper than she had expected. She had loved Caleb once, deeply and genuinely. Their early years together had been filled with shared dreams and genuine affection. When had he changed? Or had he always been this person, waiting for the right moment to reveal himself? Had their entire relationship been built on calculation rather than connection? The next morning, Nina returned to Harlow's boutique, this time with a specific purpose. She wore dark sunglasses and a sleek blazer, armor for the confrontation ahead. I'd like to see your recent sales records for Caleb Halden, she told the manager, sliding Baldwin's legal letter across the counter. As you can see, this is for a pending legal matter. I have the right to access these records as a spouse. The manager's eyes widened as she scanned the document. Of course, Ms. Halden. Give me a moment. I'll need to pull these from our system. While waiting, Nina browsed the jewelry displays, remembering the pendant Caleb had purchased. Not her style at all. She preferred understated elegance over flashy statements. Whoever this woman was, she clearly had different tastes. Minutes later, Nina was looking at a purchase history that made her stomach turn. 3 separate transactions in the past month alone. The pendant, lingerie in a size too small for Nina, and most recently, a weekend bag. For travel, the sales note indicated. The timing aligned perfectly with the mysterious withdrawals from their joint account. Is there anything else you can tell me about these purchases? Nina asked, keeping her voice steady. Was he shopping alone? The manager hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I don't usually serve Mr. Halden personally, but I believe he was accompanied on at least 2 occasions. By a younger blonde woman? Nina asked. The manager's expression confirmed it before she nodded. I believe so, yes. Nina photographed the records with her phone, thanked the manager, and left with renewed resolve. The paper trail was growing stronger by the day. Back at the hotel, she met Vanessa for lunch in the quiet corner of the restaurant, away from curious ears. I need your help tracking down more about Gina Ellis, Nina explained, picking at her salad, without much appetite. We know she works with Caleb, but I need to understand the full picture. How long they've been involved, whether there's a pattern here. Vanessa nodded, her expression determined. I've already started digging. My friend in commercial real estate helped me. That fancy new apartment she just moved into? Guess what the monthly rent is? How much? Nina leaned forward. $4,000. Plus utilities and garage space. Nina whistled low. That's at least twice what she could afford on her salary. I'm guessing accounting coordinators don't make that kind of money at Caleb's firm. Exactly, Vanessa confirmed, her eyes narrowing. And she moved in 3 weeks ago. The lease is co-signed by Caleb, but get this, he used his middle name on the paperwork. James Halden. Probably hoping to make it less obvious. Amateur move, Nina muttered, shaking her head. What else did you find? She's been with the company 2 years. Started right after you got your last promotion. Vanessa pulled out her tablet, showing Nina a LinkedIn profile. According to her social media, she transferred from the Denver office. Coincidentally, Caleb was in Denver for that conference around the same time. Nina's eyes narrowed. The timing can't be coincidental. 2 years, that's how long he's been acting different. More critical, more distant. The pieces were falling into place, with sickening clarity. That evening, Nina implemented the next phase of her plan. She created a detailed calendar entry for a job interview in Portland, 2 days from now. She meticulously crafted fake flight reservations and hotel bookings, ensuring all the details would sync to their shared cloud. Then she deliberately left her laptop open, the screen displaying the Portland company's website. I need to see what he does when he thinks I'm gone, she explained to Baldwin over the phone. If he's planning something major, he'll use the opportunity. Be careful, Baldwin warned, his tone serious. Don't put yourself at risk. If he discovers you're watching him, things could escalate quickly. I won't, Nina promised, though her hands trembled slightly as she packed a weekend bag, deliberately leaving space for the professional clothes she would supposedly need for the interview. I've taken precautions. The cameras are well hidden, and I'll be monitoring everything from a safe distance. The next morning, Nina told Caleb about the Portland opportunity over breakfast. She watched him carefully as she spoke, noting every micro-expression that crossed his face. It sounds promising, she said, infusing her voice with cautious optimism. 2 days of interviews, tours of their facilities. If it goes well, we could be looking at a fresh start. The salary would be enough to help us recover from my situation. Caleb's face performed a complex dance between forced enthusiasm and calculating assessment. That's great, babe. When do you leave? Tomorrow morning. Early flight. He nodded, already distant, clearly making plans of his own. His eyes darted to his phone twice during their brief conversation. I'll drive you to the airport. No need, Nina said quickly. I've already booked a rideshare. Don't want you to have to get up at 5. If you're sure, he replied, the relief in his voice barely concealed. That night, Nina lay awake beside her husband, listening to his even breathing, wondering how many nights he had lain beside her planning her financial ruin. The thought should have made her sad, but instead, it hardened her resolve. She would not be a victim in this story. The next morning, Nina left for her interview, but instead checked into the Westin Hotel downtown, just 15 minutes from their home. From there, she accessed the home security system on her laptop, watching as Caleb methodically went through her office once he thought she was gone. She watched in silent rage as he photographed her financial statements, personal letters, even her passport. He spent nearly an hour searching through her closet, eventually finding the notebook she'd deliberately planted with fake account numbers and investment details. That evening, Caleb's phone pinged with a text. Nina could see him reading it on the kitchen camera, a smile spreading across his face. A moment later, he was making a call. She's gone for 2 days, he said to someone, his voice carrying clearly through the audio feed. Yes, tonight works. Bring whatever you want to keep here. We'll have plenty of time. 3 hours later, Nina watched as Gina Ellis walked through her front door. She was younger than Nina had expected, perhaps 29 or 30, with sleek blonde hair and a confidence that came from getting what she wanted. She carried a small suitcase and immediately made herself at home, kicking off her shoes and dropping her bag on Nina's favorite reading chair. I still can't believe she bought that job interview story, Gina laughed. Accepting a glass of wine from Caleb, Nina's imported Cabernet, she noted with irritation. Is she really that trusting? Or just desperate? She's desperate, Caleb replied with a smirk, settling beside Gina on the couch Nina had chosen for their home. Losing her job crushed her. She'll grab at any hope. The perfect distraction while we finalize everything. They clinked glasses. To freedom, Caleb toasted. And to changing the locks soon. Gina giggled, leaning into him. I can't wait to redecorate this place. It's so boring right now. Nina felt a cold fury settle over her as she watched them lounge on her couch, drinking her wine, laughing at her expense. But she didn't look away. She recorded everything, each damning moment another nail in the coffin of her marriage. Later that night, after Gina had gone to bed, in the guest room, at least, Caleb made another call. Nina turned up the volume, recognizing the familiar cadence of his mother's voice on the other end. Mom, it's happening faster than we thought, he said, voice low but excited. She's interviewing for jobs out of state. If she gets one, we can keep the house without a fight. She'll be out of the picture. Perfect timing, Mara replied, her voice tinny through the phone's speaker. And the accounts. I've already started moving things. Once she accepts a position somewhere else, we'll suggest selling this place. She'll be too focused on the new job to notice what's happening until it's too late. Nina forwarded the video clips to Baldwin with a simple message. I've seen enough. The next day, she returned home without warning, timing her arrival for when she knew both Caleb and Gina would be there. The look on their faces as she walked through the door was almost worth the pain of the past few weeks. "Nina," Caleb sputtered, jumping up from the couch where he and Gina had been reviewing papers spread across the coffee table. "You're back early." "The interview got cancelled," Nina said smoothly, setting down her bag. Her eyes locked with Gina's, who at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, have we met?" "This is Gina," Caleb said quickly. "From work. We were just reviewing some contracts." "In our living room? How cozy." Nina's smile was razor-sharp. "Don't mind me. I just forgot something important." "Carry on." She walked calmly to her office, collected a USB drive she'd left in her desk, and walked out again. Neither Caleb nor Gina spoke as she passed. "Have a good day," she called over her shoulder as she closed the door behind her. Once back in her car, Nina finally allowed herself to shake, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. It wasn't fear or sadness that overwhelmed her. It was pure, focused rage. 2 days later, Nina filed for divorce. "You're absolutely sure about this timeline?" Baldwin asked as they finalized the divorce filing. "Once we submit, there's no going back." Nina nodded firmly. "I'm sure. And I want the restraining order filed simultaneously. Financial fraud, emotional abuse, coercion, all of it." Baldwin studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "We'll serve him at work tomorrow." As requested, Nina had chosen Caleb's workplace deliberately. It wasn't about public humiliation, though she wouldn't shed tears over that, but about ensuring he couldn't deny or hide the proceedings. The company's strict security would also prevent him from making a scene. That evening, Nina called Joel from her hotel room. "I need a favor," she said after they discussed the latest project updates. "Can you announce my promotion at next week's leadership summit? Make it official and public." "Of course," Joel agreed immediately. "I was planning something along those lines anyway. Is everything okay? You've seemed distracted lately." Nina took a deep breath. "It will be. Very soon." The next morning, Nina moved the last of her essential belongings to a short-term rental apartment she'd secured. The space was small but bright, with windows overlooking the city park. Most importantly, it was entirely hers, a fresh start without Caleb's shadow looming over her. She carefully arranged her most treasured possessions, family photographs, her grandmother's quilt, the first marketing award she'd ever won. Each item represented a piece of her identity that Caleb couldn't touch or taint. At precisely 2:17 p.m., Nina received a text from Baldwin. "Papers served. He's been named, as has Gina Ellis, due to financial entanglement. Restraining order in effect." Nina closed her eyes briefly, exhaling slowly. Phase 1 complete. She didn't have to wait long for the fallout. Her phone exploded with messages from Caleb, ranging from confused to angry to pleading. "Nina, what the hell is this? Call me right now. You don't understand what's happening. This is all a misunderstanding. Please call me. We can fix this." Nina forwarded each message to Baldwin without reading them fully, then blocked Caleb's number. Next, she called her bank to confirm the accounts were frozen as ordered by the court. "Yes, Ms. Halden," the financial advisor confirmed. "The joint accounts have been frozen, pending legal proceedings. Mr. Halden attempted to access them approximately 40 minutes ago, but was denied." "Thank you," Nina said, feeling a grim satisfaction. "Please note any further attempts." That evening, Vanessa came over with takeout and wine. "So it's done," she said, handing Nina a glass. "How does it feel?" "Unreal," Nina admitted, sinking into her new sofa. "Like I'm watching someone else's life." "I've been thinking," Vanessa said carefully, swirling her wine. "Those videos you have of Caleb and Gina in your house, planning against you, they'd be pretty powerful if shared in the right circles." Nina raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting?" "There's this private women's career forum online. A lot of people from our industry. If they saw what your husband was doing while you were supposedly struggling, it would destroy him professionally," Nina finished. "Completely," Vanessa agreed. "Men like Caleb rely on their professional reputation. Take that away." Nina considered it carefully. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protection, about warning others about a predator in their midst. Do it, she decided, but carefully. Nothing that could compromise the legal proceedings. The next day, carefully edited clips appeared on the forum. Caleb's face clearly visible as he told Gina they would change the lock soon and discussed Nina losing her leverage. Within hours, the post had hundreds of comments, mostly from outraged professional women who recognized the pattern all too well. By the following morning, the clips had spread beyond the private forum to broader professional networks. Nina's phone rang constantly with calls from unknown numbers, reporters, colleagues, even Caleb's co-workers seeking confirmation. She ignored them all, focusing instead on preparation for the leadership summit. 3 days later, Nina stood backstage at the Westwood Convention Center, reviewing her notes one last time. Joel appeared beside her, looking slightly nervous. "Big crowd," he said, gesturing toward the packed auditorium. "Are you sure you want to do the promotion announcement today? With everything else going on?" Nina straightened her shoulders. "Absolutely certain. This is the perfect time." Joel nodded, squeezing her arms supportively before walking on stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we dive into today's panels, I have an exciting announcement. It is my great pleasure to introduce our new Executive Strategy Director, a woman whose insights and leadership have already transformed our company." Nina stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause, her chin held high. "Thank you, Joel," she began, her voice strong and clear. "I'm honored to accept this position, and I look forward to leading our strategy team into a new era of growth and innovation." She paused, scanning the audience. "Many of you have heard rumors about my personal life recently. I won't address those directly today. What I will say is this: success often comes with unexpected challenges. Sometimes those challenges reveal cracks in foundations we thought were solid. And sometimes, discovering those cracks is the first step toward building something stronger." The audience was silent, captivated. "Today isn't about what I've lost," Nina continued. "It's about what I've gained: clarity, purpose, and the knowledge that I am exactly where I'm meant to be. Thank you." The applause as she left the stage was deafening. Meanwhile, Caleb's world was collapsing. The court had frozen all their shared assets. His work had placed him on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into ethical concerns. Gina had disappeared from his life, her apartment suddenly vacant, her desk at work cleared out without notice. Nina learned through Baldwin that Caleb had tried to list their house for sale, a desperate move quickly halted by court order. He'd also attempted to access their safety deposit box, only to discover Nina had already removed its contents. When Mara tried to reach out, leaving tearful voicemails claiming it was all Caleb's idea and that she was just trying to protect her son, Nina blocked her number too. The manipulation that had once confused her now seemed transparent and pathetic. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, Caleb was hit with another blow. The IRS flagged the account he'd opened with Gina for audit. The financial entanglement was deepening, with potential tax fraud implications that went beyond their divorce. Nina remained focused on her work, pouring her energy into her new role. But when a women's publication approached her about sharing her story anonymously, she agreed. The article was published a week later with a headline, "I pretended I was fired, and what my husband did next revealed everything." It went viral overnight. 3 weeks after filing for divorce, Nina sat in Baldwin's office reviewing the latest settlement proposal from Caleb's attorney. "He's getting desperate," Baldwin observed, tapping the document with his pen. "This is the 3rd revision in 10 days. Nina scanned the document. Caleb was now willing to forfeit all claims to the house, her retirement accounts, and even their joint savings. In exchange, he wanted the evidence of financial misconduct sealed. "He's worried about criminal charges," Nina realized. "As he should be," Baldwin agreed, leaning back in his chair. "The financial fraud is clear. And with the tax implications." Nina sighed, setting down the papers. "Let's counter. I'll take the house and accounts, but the evidence stays on record. His actions have consequences." As she left the office, Nina's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. She answered cautiously. "Ms. Halden? This is Alexis Wright from Life Lessons Podcast. We've been following your story through the anonymous article, and we'd love to have you as a guest. Nina declined politely but firmly. Public exposure wasn't her goal, accountability was. However, she did agree to write a piece for an online platform focused on financial independence for women. Without using names or specific details, she crafted a powerful essay about recognizing financial abuse and the importance of maintaining financial autonomy, even within marriage. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from women sharing similar experiences poured in. Private messages thanking her for giving voice to a common but hidden problem. Nina found unexpected healing in these connections. Each woman's story reminded her that what happened wasn't her fault, and that by speaking out, she was helping others recognize warning signs she had missed. Meanwhile, Caleb's professional life continued to unravel. The internal investigation at his company expanded to include expense account irregularities and misuse of company resources. Several clients requested reassignment to different account managers. His carefully cultivated reputation as a charismatic leader was dissolving. Nina heard through former mutual friends that he'd been avoiding social gatherings, becoming increasingly isolated as people chose sides. Most chose hers. One evening, as Nina worked late in her new office, a corner space with windows on two sides, Joel knocked on her door. "Just checking in," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "The Anderson proposal is looking fantastic, by the way." "Thanks," Nina replied, stretching her arms above her head. "It's coming together nicely." Joel hesitated, then said, "I've nominated you for the Bradford Leadership Award. It's national recognition for innovation in business strategy. Honestly, you should have been nominated years ago." Nina blinked in surprise. That's a big deal." "You deserve it," Joel said simply. "Think about it." After he left, Nina sat back in her chair, considering the nomination. Her initial impulse was to decline. She had enough attention right now. But something stopped her. Why shouldn't she accept recognition for her work? Why diminish her achievements because of Caleb's actions? She typed a quick email to Joel. "I accept the nomination. Thank you for your confidence." The next morning, Nina returned to the house, their house, now legally hers, to collect more of her belongings. She had been avoiding it, preferring to start fresh, but there were family heirlooms and personal items she wasn't willing to abandon. As she packed books from her office, an email notification appeared on her phone. From Caleb. Subject: "One last chance." Nina's finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. She opened it. "Nina, you never gave me a chance to explain."
See.
That was it. 5 years of marriage, weeks of deception and manipulation, and all he had to say was that she hadn't given him a chance to explain? Nina deleted the email without replying, then blocked his address for good measure. That weekend, Vanessa arrived at Nina's apartment carrying a gift-wrapped package. "What's this?" Nina asked, taking the surprisingly heavy item. "Open it," Vanessa urged. Inside was a leather-bound photo book titled, "What Freedom Looks Like." Nina opened it to find candid photos of herself from the past few months, speaking at the Leadership Summit, laughing with colleagues at a company event, standing proudly in front of her new apartment building. "When did you take these?" Nina asked, touched by the gesture. "I've been documenting your rebuilding," Vanessa explained, smiling. "Someone needed to capture your renaissance." Nina hugged her friend tightly. "Thank you for everything." "Thank yourself," Vanessa replied. "You did the hard part." Later that week, Nina attended a business networking event downtown, her first since the divorce filing became public knowledge. She braced herself for awkward questions or pitying looks, but instead received genuine congratulations on her promotion and thoughtful questions about her strategy plans. Near the end of the evening, a tall man approached her, hand extended. "Nina Halden?"
I'm Jonas Parker.
"We were in the same business ethics seminar at Westridge University about 10 years ago." Nina shook his hand, recognition dawning. "Jonas. Of course. You started that sustainable supply chain consultancy." He nodded, looking pleased she remembered. "Precisely. I've been following your career from afar. Your work on integrated marketing strategies is brilliant." They spend the next hour discussing business models and innovation trends, without a single mention of her personal life. It was refreshingly professional, free from the weight of her recent drama. As they exchanged business cards, Jonas said, "My company is hosting a round table on ethical business practices next month. We'd love to have your perspective." "I'd be honored," Nina replied, meaning it. 6 months after filing for divorce, Nina stood in her office at headquarters, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over the skyline. The divorce was final, had been for nearly 2 months. The house was sold, the assets divided, mostly in her favor, thanks to Baldwin's skilled negotiation and the overwhelming evidence against Caleb. Nina had moved into a permanent apartment in the city, a modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a balcony overlooking the river. It was entirely her own, decorated to her taste without compromise. The walls featured vibrant abstract paintings she'd always loved but Caleb had dismissed as too chaotic. The furniture was sleek and comfortable, chosen for both beauty and function. Her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder, mentoring session in 15 minutes. Nina gathered her notes and headed to the conference room, where 3 junior associates waited. These informal mentoring sessions had begun almost accidentally. After her story became known within the company, though she never discussed details, younger women had started approaching her for advice. Not just about career advancement, but about recognizing subtle control tactics and maintaining independence. Nina kept these sessions strictly professional, focused on practical strategies rather than personal stories. But the impact was clear in the grateful emails she received afterward, the growing confidence she observed in her mentor. As she wrapped up the session, one of the young women lingered. "Ms. Halden, I just wanted to say, your leadership has meant a lot to me, especially seeing how you handled everything this year." Nina smiled, touched by the sincerity. "We all have challenges. The important thing is to face them with integrity." Back in her office, Nina found Joel waiting with news. "It's official," he announced, grinning. "You've been selected for the Bradford Leadership Award. The ceremony is next month in Chicago." Nina's first instinct was to downplay the honor, but she caught herself. "That's wonderful news. Thank you for the nomination." "You earned it," Joel replied. "The committee was particularly impressed with how you maintained focus and drive during personal challenges. That's real leadership." After Joel left, Nina sat at her desk, staring at the formal invitation. A year ago, she would have immediately called Caleb to share the news. The thought gave her pause, not from sadness, but from recognition of how much had changed. That evening, Nina received an unexpected email. Her finger hovered over the delete button when she saw the sender, Caleb Halden. "You never gave me a chance to explain." The same 5 words, nothing more. Nina deleted it without response, noticing that the message produced no emotional reaction this time, just mild annoyance at the interruption. The following weekend, Nina met Vanessa for their regular brunch. As they caught up on work and mutual friends, Vanessa mentioned seeing Jonas Parker at a sustainability conference. "He asked about you," Vanessa said with a knowing smile. Quite specifically, in fact. Nina felt a surprising warmth in her cheeks. "We've had a few professional meetings. His approach to ethical business practices aligns with my strategy work." Vanessa hummed doubtfully. "That's why he wanted to know if you're seeing anyone." "And what did you tell him?" Nina asked, trying to sound casual. "That he should ask you himself," Vanessa replied with a wink. 3 weeks later, Nina stood backstage at the Bradford Leadership Award ceremony, adjusting her emerald gown and reviewing her acceptance speech one last time. The auditorium was filled with business leaders from across the country, and in the front row sat Vanessa, Jonas, and several colleagues who had flown in to support her. As her name was announced, Nina walked onto the stage with confident steps, accepting the Crystal Award with a genuine smile. "Thank you for this honor," she began, looking out at the sea of faces. "Leadership isn't just about guiding others. Sometimes it's about finding your own path forward when the map you've been following suddenly changes." She paused, gathering her thoughts. Sometimes, rock bottom isn't a tragedy. It's a trapdoor that opens up to everything better, to authentic relationships, to genuine success built on integrity rather than appearance, to the person you were always meant to become. The applause was thunderous as she concluded. Backstage, Jonas handed her a bouquet of lilies. "That was powerful," he said simply.
It was honest, Nina replied.
Later that night, as the celebration wound down, Nina slipped away early. She wanted a moment to herself, to absorb everything that had happened. Back at her hotel room, she kicked off her heels and stepped onto the balcony, gazing out at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from colleagues and friends, but she set it aside, preferring the quiet. A week later, Nina walked into her bright new apartment, grocery bags in hand. She set them on the counter and moved to open the curtains, letting the afternoon sunlight flood the space. Everything felt different now, lighter, clearer, more authentically hers. The betrayal that had nearly broken her had instead freed her from a life built on false foundations. Nina took a deep breath, feeling the warm sunlight on her face, and smiled to herself. No more pretending. Was there ever truly love in Nina's marriage, or merely the perfect illusion of it? If this story resonated with you, hit like, subscribe, and share with someone who understands that sometimes the most powerful act of self-love is walking away.